Hello everyone, Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching. This video comes from the Los Angeles Sheriff's Office or Sheriff's Department. This is a video about the sheriff talking about the budget that was brought up and how it devalues public safety. And during the official budget talks, he was only allowed 3 minutes to have any talking points during the budget meeting, and obviously that was not enough. So he has decided to put together a press conference and talk about some of these budgeting issues. Now, budget issues when it comes to public safety are they can be big issues. So each area of this country is obviously way different from the other, and in some areas, some counties are rather poor. They don't have a large population. They don't have a whole lot of economic flourishment. They don't have a lot of large businesses that attract a lot of more workers from out of county and whatnot. So they're kind of, in a sense, a little bit stagnant. I mean, they got like stores, grocery stores and stuff like that, but they just don't have a lot of big booming business in their county. And so those counties, the taxes that they get are pretty small. And there are some public safety agencies out there that are just downright poor and they can't afford stuff. So there's lots and lots of police agencies out there where police can't even afford, or the individual officers, they can't even afford stuff, or the agency cannot afford stuff for the individual officers, like necessary stuff like bullet-resistant vests, duty gear, stuff like that. There are some places in this nation where the agencies are so freaking poor that the individual officers are having to buy that stuff out of pocket. There are some places where officers basically have to take out a small loan to purchase the necessary equipment to do the job because their agency just can't afford it. And the only thing the agency can afford is a vehicle, a radio, and the fuel to go in that vehicle. A lot of other stuff, it's just hard for them to furnish. There are some agencies where the county and the city, they got pretty good tax base. They got a lot of large businesses there, maybe some big hospitals, factories, warehouses, etc. And they got a large enough population where they got some money to throw around, and they can get decent equipment for their first responders. And first responders not just being police, but also fire and or EMS. So some places are dirt poor, some places are doing really good, and then there's other places where when you look at the overall budget and you see the millions and millions of dollars, you're thinking, oh, wow, man, those guys are doing freaking amazing. They got millions upon millions of dollars. Well, when you break it down and you look at how many officers they have, how many vehicles they have, the amount of overtime that they're doing, etc., a lot of that money is eaten up right off the bat, just from salaries, overtime, vehicles, and fuel. That eats up a shit ton of money. And then also, not just the salaries and the number of people, but also the number of equipment they have to end up buying. I mean, if they have to buy 1,000 holsters, 1,000 belts, 1,000 vests, 1,000 pepper spray pouches, 1,000 cans of pepper spray, 1,000 tasers, 1,000, 2,000 cartridges, that stuff adds up real quick. And so, although it looks like they've got a whole lot of money to play around with, when you break it down and see all the shit they have to buy and all the things they got to pay for, they're really not, a whole lot better off than some of these other agencies out there that seem to be doing pretty good. They're almost hand in hand similar to them. So I don't know everything there is to know about Los Angeles and the city and the county, but I do know enough about budgets and managing a public safety agency to know that there's more to it than what people think. People think that these millions of dollars in the budget means that, you know, all this stuff is just gravy, and it's not. Like, that's a lot of that is eaten up by just salaries, overtime, and vehicles and fuel. So I started to watch a little bit of this video, and I paused it, and I was like, you know what? I think I got like maybe 8 minutes in at most, and I was like, you know what? I gotta go back, restart this, and just do a video where I watch it pretty much almost in its entirety for the first time, and then pause intermittently here and there and talk about things. And so kind of getting like a reaction type of video out of it. So another thing about budget, and this is kind of going off on a little rant, but, you know, there's some people who like to say police are revenue generators, they're road pirates, you know, they just, you know, write tickets to, you know, make money, blah, blah, blah. That's probably one of the most dumbest, asinine statements that anyone could ever make. When you look at some of these agencies out there, they're so dirt poor that if they could truly make money off writing citations, that's all they would do. They would be writing all the tickets they could get. They would be mowing down fucking forests to make citation papers just to write enough of them as they could to actually get a decent living salary, to get some updated equipment, to get a car that doesn't have 200 freaking thousand miles on it. If these agencies could write tickets and make so much money off of them, you would not see agencies driving around in old ass Crown Vic cars. Crown Vics, Ford Motor Company stopped making those damn things back in 2011. It's 2022, and their agencies still being forced to have to drive these old fucking cars around because they can't afford to get any new ones. There are agencies that it is hard for them to buy new uniforms for their officers, and their officers are wearing uniforms that are wearing out, and some of these officers are having to pay out of pocket to go to a seamstress to have some parts of the uniform sewn back together, or they're just having to buy a whole new shirt and pant altogether because the agency just can't afford it. They're having to buy their own equipment. Some places they have to buy their own gun, etc. So if these places were really truly able to write a shit ton of tickets and make a lot of money, you wouldn't see officers driving around in shit cars. They'd be driving around in fucking Teslas with all the LED lights you could imagine on them. They'd be driving the latest, greatest cruiser. They'd have all the latest, greatest Gucci gear, brand new this, brand new that, and they would have some kick-ass salaries, and they would never be hurting for personnel. They'd be extremely well-staffed, and everyone could actually take good vacations and not be forced to only have to take but maybe a few days of vacation here and there because they're just so freaking short-staffed they can't afford to let anybody take off work. So, in that rant, and we'll get into the video.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Lorena Rodriguez. I am the captain at Sheriff's Information Bureau. Today, Sheriff Alex Villanueva will discuss the implications our department will face under the recommended LA County budget for fiscal years 2022-2023. Joining us today, Division Director Conrad Meredith and Assistant Division Director Richard Martinez. Now it is my honor to present the Sheriff of Los Angeles County, Alex Villanueva.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. The budget was item number 84 on yesterday's Board of Supervisors agenda, and as per standard custom, they only allow the elected sheriff to speak 3 minutes on the topic, and obviously there's no way you could discuss this in 3 minutes, so I think it was better to talk about their ill-advised plan today, and we can do it with some clarity and with the support of our subject matter experts, who comes from Conrad Meredith and Richard Martinez, who have, between the two of them, I'd say, was it 60 plus years And that includes experience in the CEO's office, preparing the countywide budget, and with the Sheriff's Department budget. So they are literally the subject matter experts. So let's start. You remember this from the State of the Union, January 20th. Let's roll the tape.
We should all agree the answer is not to defund the police. It's to fund the police. Fund them. Fund them. We should all agree the answer is not to defund the police. It's to fund the police. Fund them. Fund them.
That's a very important moment in the State of the Union address. Let's go to the next one. Apparently, they weren't paying attention, these three individuals. So, go on to the next.
Like, you could just look at these people and just tell that they are not pro-law enforcement. And that is a problem for some places here in the country. Your city councilmen, your city aldermen, your county magistrates, what's another name for some county officials that govern fiscal stuff? There's a few different names for these kind of positions all across the country, and I can't remember them all. But there are some places where these people are elected officials locally, and some of their responsibilities are to overlook the fiscal matters for that body of government. So, for example, a city, they may have city council members, or they may be called city commissioners or city aldermen, something. They're called something, but their job is to overlook some of the budget stuff of that city and sit together in a quorum and make up decisions for the city at broad. And unfortunately, in some of those places, there are some real wacky liberal motherfuckers who are elected to those positions, and they are not pro-law enforcement. Some of them hate the police, and that really makes it hard for the police in those areas when they want to get their budgets unscrewed, and they get so much opposition from people who hate the police. And like I said, you can tell for sure just by looking at these people, they're not pro-law enforcement.
And here's some details of the budget they unveiled, this $38.5 billion budget. We call it a woke budget because that's in essence what it is. They created 4 new departments. In an era where everyone's trying to be as efficient and as effective as possible and as lean, government operations, and we're sitting on an over $2 billion surplus. As you're defunding law enforcement, you have the time to create 4 new departments. Okay? Reallocating $100 million for social experiments, that's called Measure J. They renamed it, and it's Community Investment, Care First Community Investment Initiative, I think. So it was thrown out in court as unconstitutional, but that's not to stop the Board of Supervisors. Last fiscal year, they set aside $100 million that came from the Sheriff's Department budget, and this year they're setting aside another $100 million. So now you have $200 million that's going to this. Of course, they're going to continue trying to close Men's Central Jail without an alternative. They hired a consultant. They pay the consultant God knows how much money, and the consultant told them you cannot close Men's Central Jail without a viable alternative. So what do? Let's just ignore the consultant and we'll plan for it anyway. I don't know. This is about as equivalent as going la 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 and just ignoring reality. The fact is, we cannot close Men's Central Jail without that alternative. We need to provide a constitutional level, minimum level of care for all of our inmates in our custody. We can't wish away 4,500 inmates. Plain and simple. Okay. They are increasing funding to this failed alternatives to incarceration, who's been in existence for I don't know how many years now. They keep throwing money at it, and we keep expecting this grandiose idea that somehow we're going to have some alternative to the people that are inside our county jail when they're sentenced or pretrial detention, and it never comes to bear fruit. Never. They show, oh, we had this many people, 300 here or this or that, but when you look at the average county a year, we'll put through over 100,000 inmates through the county jail system. So if they say they got 1,000, they provide an alternative to incarceration for 1,000. Well, that's literally less than 1% of what we put through the system on a year. So they're not moving the needle at all. But doesn't stop the Board of Supervisors and can continue to fund them, of course. And we have 37 county departments, not counting the 4 new ones, which would make it, I guess, 41. But they're going to keep the hiring freeze on the Sheriff's Department. The only department that has a hiring freeze. They did.
Okay, so I got to pause it right now. These 4 new departments that he talked about, I can't remember if he went into detail about what they are, but it could be like some mental health department, some peace. What was the terminology? There was something that somewhere like Oakland, California, they tried some type of program where they actually took convicted felons and gave them city vehicles and paid them to drive around and hang out in the hoods and go mingle with gang members and try to get them to stop fighting each other. And there was some stupid ass name for it, and I can't remember what it was, but for all I know, that's one thing they could be doing, but I don't know for sure. This reallocating $100 million pretty much taken a lot from the sheriff's office and putting it towards these social experiments. And then closing of the jail without any alternatives, and wanting to do alternatives to incarceration. So this is something the woke liberal left just loves fucking thinking about, talking about, and trying to do. They look at jail as something that the white man does to maliciously hurt non-white people. They try to come up with these things to keep people out of jail. And so, like New York, one thing is bail reform. We can see how fucking disastrously that is going on up in New York. Saw an article the other day talking about how a lot of people in New York are just fed up with bail reform and how they feel victimized and unsafe in their own city. In a city that was kind of already unsafe to begin with, now they're super feeling unsafe. So, a closing of a jail. Like, where are you going to put the violent offenders at without a jail? Men's Central Jail. Like, where are some of these more violent offenders going? I don't know. That's a good question. Now, obviously, they've got to have more than one jail. So, Men's Central Jail, that may be one of 3 jails they operate, 2 jails. I don't know. I don't know much about Los Angeles, like I said. But the closing of a detention facility is not good. There are people who need to be locked in until the trial happens. Yes, everyone is innocent until proven guilty. That is a staple within the U.S., right? Like that. Been like that for a while. But there are some people, like Ted Bundy, for example, even though he's technically innocent until proven guilty, he's not exactly someone you want out walking the fucking streets, right? He's assumed innocent until proven guilty, but we all fucking know he's guilty, and there are some safety concerns with letting someone like Ted Bundy roam in the streets until his trial to send him off to prison. Jails have to exist for that reason. You have to be able to put people like that in a concrete room until you can have that official moment in court where you're like, okay, yeah, we the people find him guilty, now let's send him to prison. Otherwise, they're going to go out and continue doing the same shit they were doing and hurting more people. So closing a jail is going to take away beds to be able to put these people. And because you're limiting the amount of beds to put these people in, that now means that you're releasing all these other people who should still be sitting in jail because it's punishment for them. burglars and drug dealers and other problematic people. They, although they are innocent until proven guilty, there needs to be a place for them to sit at for time out because they got caught doing something, and then have their moment in court and get a longer time out. That's just going to lead to more crimes going on. When the police go catch a shoplifter and cite and release, and they go weeks without ever having to show up to court, and then don't ever show up to court again, and then they get picked up for failure to appear and then released and then given a new court date within the day. They go on and not really given. And then when they go finally meet at the court, some light silly bullshit decision is made and nothing serious is done to them. So what happens then is those people who get arrested for shoplifting and never really spend any time in a jail, they don't give a shit. It's a game. It's a game to them. They'll keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it because they know nothing's going to happen to them. And that is a problem that we're seeing in many other parts of the country, particularly, big metropolitan areas where you got a bunch of woke idiots in charge. And then these people come up with these excuses of, well, you can't criminalize trying to feed a family or some stupid bullshit. You need to criminalize shoplifting. Someone has had to pay for all that merchandise to put out for sale, and now that it's all stolen, they can't recoup their costs, they can't make a profit, and then guess what? Now they can't feed their family. So who's it going to be? Where's the scales at here, right? And this whole argument of, they're just feeding their families, bullshit. They're not. No. Like, if they were taking a banana, that'd be one thing, but when they're taking other things that they go sell on the streets and make money, that's totally different. Totally different. These alternatives to incarceration, these are things like house incarceration, putting ankle monitors on people. Ankle monitor stuff has been around for a while, and it's complete bullshit. They're still able to do the bullshit things they do, and oftentimes they'll break their rules of where they got to be at. And the people who are in charge of this stuff are not police officers. The police officers don't monitor these little bracelets. It's some social worker who monitors this kind of stuff, or some probation officer who monitors this kind of stuff, and they're super lenient. And if you ever go step foot in some type of community service office, probation office, or something like that, you're not going to find the same type of person that you're going to find on a sheriff's office or at a state police post. They're totally different people, and a lot of times they're a lot more lenient, and they're just not in the mindset like some law enforcement are. And so there's very crappy supervision when it comes to these alternatives to incarceration, because the people just simply don't give a shit, or they're too sympathizing towards the criminal and want to give them multiple chances. Oh, you weren't at home because traffic was really congested, and you were 20 miles out of your way from work to home. You was all the way over in this part of the town, but traffic was so heavy you couldn't get home on time. Okay, we'll give you another chance. No, this is why these things fail, is because the people who's in charge of supervising this stuff aren't the best people to be in charge of supervising this stuff. And then also, there's ways of getting around home incarceration and still being able to sell drugs. Just sell drugs out of the house. Yeah, it's a little bit more riskier for them, but they can still sell drugs within the house. They can also do other bullshit. The hiring freeze. So, yeah, that's hard. So, agencies are losing people to regular retirement phases. So there's, each year, depending on, and it's hard to say because, in the year 1995, one agency might have been able to hire 50 officers, and then in 1999, they was only able to hire 15. And then so when it comes to a certain year, depending on the officers, you may have some who are ready to retire right at the moment they are eligible. Some, they want to wait a couple years. Some try to max it out as much as possible. So it's kind of hard to say how many people are retiring each year from an agency, because it really depends on back when the eligibility, or when you track back eligibility time during that hiring time many years ago, how many people were hired, etc. It's really hard to come up with that number. But agencies are continuously losing people to retirement as any other, business would. And so they were losing those people. And then on top of that, they may be losing people who are finding more lucrative positions somewhere else in the agent or the state, somewhere else within that county or city, or a city within that county, and they move, they transition and go to there. And then you have some people who are getting fired. Either they're getting fired for good, legit reasons, or they're getting fired for bullshit reasons. And when these people move out, who is taking their spot? If you're on a hiring freeze, no one's taking their spot. So if you have I don't know how many people they have working. Let's say they got it's a 200 person agency, right? If you keep losing people over time and you went from 200 to 100, you're real short. And those people who are left still working, they're having to work a bunch of overtime. And you can go to any factory and warehouse in the country and you can look at their staffing issues. People freaking hate overtime. Lots of factories and warehouses have a lot of revolving doors due to how they treat people in regards to labor management. And one thing people do not like is overtime. And so these agencies that incur a shit ton of overtime, what happens with their employees? They go somewhere else. They go to some other agency that doesn't have as much overtime, got a little bit more better benefits. There's actually some places where I've heard of some people going to another agency that had actually less benefits than what they were getting, but they wanted to go there because they were so sick and tired of working all the overtime all the damn time. They never got to see their family. So this hiring freeze is just going to cause more people to quit, and the more officers that quit, there's less of them on the street. And when there's less officers on the street doing stuff, then that means the ones who do get into stuff and arrest people, you take 10 people on a shift and 3 or 4 of them have arrested people. One's doing accident reconstruction, whatever. They got to go take the person to jail, and they're busy doing that. You can take, on certain arrests, you start a traffic stop and you go through this whole process and you find something to arrest somebody on and you find some more stuff. You got to collect some evidence, get them to jail, do the report and everything. It could be like 2 hours that you can have an officer off the street just based off one traffic stop that led to an arrest. And so when multiple of those things are occurring throughout a shift and you only got 10 people working, but there's arrests going on, accident reconstruction, there's a robbery in progress, and they get there, or there was a burglary and they go there and do a report. Although you got 10 people on shift, you realistically only got maybe 2 to 3 people at any given time who's able to go respond to these calls. And then there's some places that don't get advertised a whole lot. There's some places where there's moments in time throughout a shift, there's no one able to respond to a call. They're all busy and tied up on doing stuff. That happens. Even for larger cities, that happens. They have no one able to respond to certain stuff at any given time, and which is why you'll see a backlog of calls for them to go to. So obviously, dispatchers will prioritize different stuff and assign different priorities to different calls. So like a loud noise complaint, a simple theft from a house. That's why it takes hours for officers to respond to those things, because it has a lower priority and they are trying to clear the big stuff first. And then when they finally have time to get to it, that's when they can do it. There's some times where there's calls that are still holding for a day, like a theft report or something like that. So with the hiring freeze, it just makes it worse, because as people leave, you can't get more people in, and that puts less officers out on the street, and they're tired of working overtime. And then you'll get some who abuse sick calls. They'll call in, I'm sick, when they're not really sick, but they're just so freaking tired of working. They call in sick. They got the sick hours for it. All they got to do is get a doctor's note. So hiring freezes are hurting. These alternatives to incarceration aren't really doing much. People aren't learning a lesson. And closing jails is taking away beds. It's taking away places to put the violent offenders. And these social experiments, that's all they are. They're experiments. There's nothing that's been proven that these things work. These are just ideas from emotional people. Emotional people are the ones who are trying to control this budget. And that's a problem. That is a problem when you get into large metropolitan areas, because you got a lot of emotional people who vote based off of emotions, and they put in power people who make decisions based off of emotions. They are completely void of anything with logic.
Discuss, however, somehow how to increase hiring for the fire department, health services, and all these other entities, but not the sheriff's department. And which, of course, when you're restricting academy class, you can't hire civilians. We have our crime lab, which is overwhelmingly professional staff. We have not hired a single person since I've been in office. And as they're aging out and retiring, we're not replacing them. We're losing institutional knowledge. We're
Just
losing
talk
the
about
capacity
that.
to train their replacements. And, of course, we're degrading.
So institutional knowledge, that's another great point to bring up. So as people work over the time, they gain knowledge. So it's not just simple knowledge either. It's trial and error type of knowledge. So when you have someone who's been around the block a long time, they can show the new people, hey, this is what textbook says to do, but this is how you can still do it, get the same thing done. It's just a different way of doing it. Or, hey, I've seen this particular problem once before. This is how you solve it. Lots of different things that older people are able to pass on to the newer people, that the newer people, if they didn't have that one-on-one time with the older people who are retiring, they wouldn't ever know it. So he's completely right. Like, as these people are retiring out, they're leaving, and there's no one there for them to be passing their knowledge on to. There's no newborns, so to speak, who's going to soak up that information. Once these people retire, they're gone. They are gone. If that agency is lucky enough to have a budget to be able to maybe pay them to come in to do some consulting after retirement, that's one thing. But once they retire, they're gone. And all that knowledge goes with them. And if there's no one there to soak up the knowledge before they leave, it's lost. And so they could be operating at a really good peak performance right now with all those personnel in place. But as they drop in numbers and then have to hire a whole bunch of new people, well, those new people aren't experienced. They're not well oiled. And so if they were operating at 95% peak capacity or whatever, if they're having to operate with all brand new people, now they can be bumped down to like 60% peak capacity or whatever, and not be operating as they could be, or should be rather.
The capacity of the crime lab. This is intentional by the Board of Supervisors. All right, hit it. Now, Board of Supervisors.
All right.
Grading the capacity of the crime lab. This is intentional by the Board of Supervisors.
So why would this be intentional by the Board of Supervisors? If the crime lab is not able to process certain things within a certain amount of time, then that plays into people's constitutional rights to have the right to a speedy trial. And so if crime labs are years behind on getting stuff done, well, guess what? We can't hold people that long, and while the crime lab unscrews themselves and gets stuff done. So literally, people are being released from the system because evidence is not being processed properly. It's not being processed in a timely manner. There are lots of dockets out there that are being cleared. And this is especially true during COVID. There were a lot of people who did not meet that constitutional requirement of time, and because COVID had shut down the courts and things got delayed, there's been a lot of people who had their cases completely thrown out, all because the judicial system dropped the ball, and it was no longer constitutional to hold these people for their crimes, and they had to clear the docket and get them out. That's a problem, and I believe him when he says that's their intent. They're doing this on purpose, and they are. They probably most likely are doing this on purpose with the intent of getting people cleared off the docket, get released out of the jail, because it's taken the judicial system too long to be able to give the person their constitutional right to a speedy trial.
All right, hit it. Now, this is their slide. They're announcing a decrease in the budget. Last year was 39.3. Now they're saying it's 38.5, but they have a 6% growth in tax revenue. Everyone who got that property tax bill, you saw your taxes went up. And they're also estimating a 7.9 increase in sales tax revenue. Yet they're forecasting a lower budget overall for the county, and there's still that $2.4 billion surplus from last fiscal year. Where is the money going? What are they doing with it? And then they identify challenges and uncertainties: inflation, labor negotiations, COVID impacts, unsustainable geopolitical climate, energy prices, litigation, but they couldn't bear themselves to talk about the impact of homelessness and violent crime. And that's the impact on the economy. Apparently that was too much for them to bear. Okay, let's go to the next one. Measure J, again, was ruled unconstitutional last year, but here, this is their own slide. Recommended allocations support key board priorities. When they say board priorities, I should note that's the priorities of a majority of the Board of Supervisors. Not all the Board of Supervisors, a majority. It is not a reflective of the priorities of the community, for sure. Okay? Ramping up to implement Measure J by setting aside a year one down payment of $100 million. Well, they repeated that last year and then this year. Now it's $200 million. They're ramping up something that the courts declared was unconstitutional and is coming at the expense of decreasing resources for law enforcement. Okay? And, okay, let's go on to the next one. Actually, back up the slide a second. This last one here, continue our long-standing commitment to fighting homelessness. Well, God bless them. Based on that long-standing commitment, they're seeing the homeless population double in 10 years, and it grows at a healthy 14% per year. You know, that long-standing commitment is really impressive, the impact and their success rate. Heaven forbid they'd actually try to figure out what did we do wrong and can we address it and do just a total change of direction course in our policies and our overall plan, our strategic plan for homelessness. There is none. That's the problem. Okay, hit it. Now, balancing public safety with reforms. This is not a zero-sum game. No, memo to the Board of Supervisors, the way you practice your budget, it is a zero-sum game. What you're funding in other areas of the department with your social experiments, you're taking away from law enforcement. So that is what is a classic definition of a zero-sum game, okay? A commitment to closing Men's Central Jail and protecting the rights of those who are incarcerated. Funny. They are so interested in protecting the rights of those incarcerated that I'm having to sue the Board of Supervisors to defend the rights of those who are incarcerated because the deprivation of funds to the Sheriff's Department has dropped our ability to provide a constitutionally minimum guaranteed level of health and safety within the confines of the jail system, specifically because of the defunding and the curtailment of budgeted positions in the Sheriff's Department budget, done by the Board of Supervisors. So the cost of just maintaining the 3 consent decrees is $53 million. We asked that of the board. They turned us down, and they're giving $15.3 million. But that $15.3 million is not going to our department. No. $10 million is going to a provisional funding unit. They're going to set it aside. And they're going to send $5 million directly to the Department of Health Services, to Correctional Health Services. So the overall balance, which the $53 million that is required, they're not paying for it. So that's why the litigation is going to continue, and they're going to have to defend that issue. The federal monitors have pointed out the lack of staffing is one of the main obstacles to achieving all of the positions that are the goals that we have to satisfy to meet our obligations under the 3 different consent decrees. And they are actually physically impairing our ability to satisfy the consent decrees. That's why they're subject of a lawsuit, and they're going to be defendants in a lawsuit. Okay? In fact, this is going to be pretty cool because we may have to put one of them on the stand to testify under oath. God forbid. Okay. It also reflects, this is the board's language, it reflects a commitment to public safety. That's not a commitment to public safety. You're giving me 12.
So, federal consent decree regarding treatment of individuals with mental illness in county jails. So, mental illness, mental health is this buzzword that's been floating around for the last couple of years, and it's just growing with intensity. It seems like mental illness is the answer for every damn thing on why everybody does something. Oh, no, he's not a bad person. He just has mental illness. Okay. So mental illness has now become this crutch for explaining and dismissing why someone has done something egregious, why someone has done something illegal and has harmed someone, taking away any accountability for those individuals. There is no more accountability for people. We just blame it on mental illness. Oh no, you was just mentally disturbed. There's nothing. You didn't do anything wrong. You just got mental health issues. At what point are we going to have to sit down and say, this is stupid? People got some problems, but not everybody is a mental health problem. Not everything is a mental health issue. There are some people who are just quite simply fucked up. And mental health involved or not, there's nothing that's going to be able to help these people at all. And the only thing that can be done to protect the public from them is to keep them locked away. And or if they're found guilty in a court of law and the death penalty is suitable, then they can get the death penalty. But other than that, it's keeping them locked away. This whole mental illness thing is just another ploy by the woke liberal left to keep people out of jail as best as they can.
$1 million, but you're restricting my ability to hire the people and lift the hiring freeze on the sheriff's department is not a commitment to public safety. Stop playing with the words. All right? Complements existing investments. This is CareFirst community investments. Okay? That is just a massive slush fund, and what they're doing is they're going to create a bunch of new nonprofits with CEOs who are going to be making six-figure salaries, and that's where all the money is going to be funneled to. Just like the homeless industrial complex, this is what it's going to be. Another boondoggle. Our mental evaluation teams remains untouched. We need to have more. They're not giving it. The host team, they're only funded for 4 deputies, 1 sergeant, 1 lieutenant. I expanded it to 22. 2 sergeants and 2 lieutenants. And their success has been overwhelmingly on the Venice Boardwalk, on Olvera Street, St. Vincent, the VA Center, on San Vicente Boulevard, in all the places throughout LA County, unincorporated areas where we're breaking up encampments, get people the shelter they need, 0 arrests, 0 uses of force, 100% success rate. You would think county government would take a clue, hey, let's see what they're doing, and can we expand their effort? No. They rejected our funding of the host team. So it stays at 4 deputies, 1 sergeant, and 1 lieutenant. So when they talk about complements existing investments, they're lying. Yes, Board of Supervisors, you got caught in a lie. Proof positive here. Minimum required number of classes is 8 per year just to keep up with attrition. People age out, retire, suffer illnesses or injuries that cause them to have to retire, workers-related injuries. People transfer out to other agencies. And so if we're underneath the red line of 8, that means the department shrinks. So look at 2021 and 2022. While the rest of the county had no hiring freeze, they decided to impose a hiring freeze and our ability to hire sufficient to keep up with attrition. So right now we're in a free fall and we're shrinking. So if that's the board's, what a commitment to public safety looks like, I fear for the safety of LA County. LA Times, they went through, they had their article, I think this came out yesterday. Notice all the big beneficiaries. Yeah, they're going to spend a lot on would be homeless, spending increase would be homeless and affordable housing services. When you ever hear the word services here, notice it does not include increasing emergency shelter capacity. Notice it does not include increasing residential mental health treatment capacity or substance abuse capacity residential. Not at all. More consultant, more service provider, more kids running around at $18 an hour, giving everybody a water bottle and a clipboard, and that's called services. That's their version of outreach. Okay, funding for Measure H, again, all part of the homeless industrial complex. And this is curious, home ownership in the county budget. Acquisition of home ownership. Eviction defense, that's good. Mortgage relief to a certain degree is good. Rapid rehousing to avoid homelessness, great idea. But the people that are easiest to rehouse are the ones that lost housing in the first place due to a loss of a job, an illness, an injury, something like that. But these are able-bodied people who are willing, and they're the ones that are not going to be 10 years homeless on the street waiting for the mailman. These are people that are the easiest to house. And it's not a bad investment. But the home ownership part, with public tax dollars, I say, all right, keep going. Now, where the money goes, health, public assistance, public protection. Very curious, though, what they call public protection. $9.46 billion. And this is what it looks like. Sheriff's Department budget. If you know our budget, 3.46. Last year we ended with 3.61. So now our budget is decreasing. But somehow they said, we gave him $2 million more of authorized expenditure. Great. But it lost about $150 million in the process. So I'm not too sure exactly how that's a budget increase. But this is the pie chart. But under here they have animal care and control, alternative public defender, which, by the way, they were hiring a lot more people, which is curious because now you have a DA who is not prosecuting hardly anything. So I'm not sure exactly what the need for more staffing at the public defender's office, since it's a free-for-all. All right, keep going. Here's a perspective for you. You can see the county's budget and a sheriff's department budget, and you can see how the county budget keeps getting bigger, and ours is pretty much flatlined. Even though our costs keep increasing, our budget doesn't increase. So at the end of the year, they play gimmicks with the budget, right? And then they're going to declare, we have roughly $300 to $400 million in structural deficits on our budget. So at the end of every fiscal year, they're going to start reconciling the books. And a lot of these things are structural deficits that they're going to have to eat. They acknowledge that there was some structural deficit in the alternatives to incarceration, and they give them about $30 million to correct it. Great. We have in one category alone, which is our trial court funding, we have a structural deficit that is in excess of $80 million for this fiscal year. We're not getting any money to cover that structural deficit. No. All right. And as you can see, net county costs and our percentage of it, a high point was 11.7. We're down to 9%. So our budget is shrinking as the county budget is growing. And to comparison with other counties, net county cost, this is basically what's called the general fund. Riverside County, 38%, Orange, 25%, Ventura, 32%, San Bernardino, 22%, and we're all down here all by ourselves at 16%, Los Angeles County. Imagine that. And where are all the homeless located? LA County. Which one has the highest crime rate overall? LA County. And I could keep going on about all the things that are going wrong with LA County. Keep going. Fiscal year 2021, they took 1,281 positions. This in the heydays of the George Floyd and let's defund law enforcement. And supervisors said they wanted to seize the moment. Well, they seized the moment, all right. They took away 1,281 positions. 586 sworn, 695 professional staff. That's $139 million. They have never returned these positions or the money. And when they took the positions, the work didn't diminish. Actually, the workload has increased. The number of personnel available to do the workload is now decreasing. So that means per person, more work. And this is exactly what it looks like. It was at our high point, 18,300 in 2020. And then we lost 1,281 positions, so now that reduces to 17,900. Now with the hiring freeze and the vacancies, we're down to 15,241. And between here and here, we've had pandemic, civil unrest, and a huge surge in violent crime as we're in a free fall downward of positions. Now you add impairments, and that's what that looks like. Now we're down to 14,094. This is the available personnel to get the job done. So we're missing 4,206 people. And then you wonder, why does crime seem out of control? Why can we not get a handle? There's a lot of things that drive crime rates. It's a multivariate equation, to put it in fancy terms. But the things that we do control, we're losing the ability to control them because the board is insisting on continuing to defund the Sheriff's Department's operations. And one last motion I want to talk about from yesterday. This came from motion by Supervisors Holly Mitchell and Hilda Solis. Agenda item 22, ensuring proper oversight of the LA County Sheriff's Department's participation within the Joint Regional Intelligence Center. And this is an excerpt of that board motion. Reports of potential abuse by the sheriff of his investigative powers, including investigations and intimidation of the sheriff's political enemies. The Attorney General is responsible for overseeing the conduct and holding accountable sheriffs and district attorneys throughout the state of California, all 58 counties. The Attorney General is independently elected. At this point right now is appointed, but is independently elected, and that is the Attorney General's responsibility. The Board of Supervisors is a political body. And when they appoint an Inspector General, the Inspector General is not independent. So let's stop that nonsense right now. Okay? And look at this. Supervisor Mitchell, unfortunately, after many other attempts to ensure proper oversight, the board must take this step to ensure the Office of Inspector General has the tools it needs to perform its basic duties. Well, the Inspector General has access to all the information the Inspector General needs to do his duties. The fact that he chooses not to do them, or claim that he chooses not to do them, does not make it so. And the fact is, the Joint Regional Intelligence Center was created in the aftermath of 9/11 by a federal commission, and it's a federal entity led by the FBI, and it's a joint powers authority, and includes the federal government and all the federal three-letter entities, state government, county, and the city of LA. And they're all law enforcement. So this is a joint effort. There's an appointed director who's paid by the state of California, and there's already oversight built into the equation. It just does not involve political antics from the Board of Supervisors of LA, nor does it involve the political antics of a political appointee of the board. All right, so let's take a look at this and go to the next slide. This is the mission of the JRIC. Okay, fully integrate criminal and terrorism threat intelligence information. Their mission is intelligence and analysis. They are not a primary investigative body of any kind for any crime. As a result of their intelligence gathering and their analysis, they come across a potential crime, they hand it off to the appropriate agency to investigate it. That's how the system works. So if it's a crime that has federal implications, it goes to the FBI. If it's state level crime of corruption at the state level, it goes to the state level agency or goes to the local agencies. That's how the system works. There's no abuse of any type of investigative power into the system. And we are part of a major team. We are one part of a large operation. And every person who is on the Joint Regional Intelligence Center has to have a security clearance. I believe it's, is it top secret for JRIC? Secret clearance, minimum, and I know some have the top secret. So that's what's required. And everyone there has a need to know and a right to know. You have to have both things to be part of this. And having a political entity interject themselves in this operation, they're doing it for only one purpose, because they want to see what is possibly that they are criminally involved in and what the investigative entities and the intelligence community is viewing of them. So basically, they're trying to insert the fox into the hen house. And as the saying goes in Spanish, es que nada debe, nada teme. Well, this applies to the Board of Supervisors, and it applies to Max Huntsman as well. So JADER will not be a primary investigative entity. So let's keep that in mind. So now they want to have me submit to the Inspector General his approval for grants that arise out of the JRIC operation. And sorry to disappoint the Board of Supervisors, we'll be not doing that at all. We'll submit our grant application as we have to you. What you do with them is your business. If you choose to reject them and defund, like you're doing everything else, law enforcement activities, anti-terrorism efforts that keeps our community safe, well, that's going to be on your resume. You'll have to explain that to your constituents. But as the elected sheriff of Los Angeles County, I will not be submitting to approval something to a political entity that you created. That's not how the system works, okay?
And this is why I love elected sheriffs. Elected sheriffs answer to the people. They don't answer to some of these other fuckstick people. This is why I really wish that city chiefs of police were elected officials. Think about all these city agencies out there where the person who's sitting in the chief's chair, they have to bend over to their board of commission. They have to bend over to their board of supervisors, as this area calls them. They have to bend over to those people. And if they buck the system, if they do something like this, they can face termination from their city government. A sheriff? Board of Supervisors can't go terminate the sheriff. It don't work like that. So that's why I really like how the sheriff is an elected position, and I really wish that chiefs of police were elected as well. I also wish that when it came to state police, highway patrol, that those chief positions were also elected, because those people, they're appointed by, high up, but ultimately the governor can choose whether or not they want to keep them or not, and they can very significantly influence them. So for better protection of the people, I think that all chief law enforcement officers in this country need to be elected officials.
And Hilda Solis, she also tweeted out, she's very proud of her budget, by the way. She wants to do a listening session. Well, I think it'd be pretty cool if Supervisor Solis actually listened to her constituents. Maybe she can listen to the transit riders that had to ride with a dead guy on the train. Maybe she can listen to residents of East LA who are wondering why it takes so long for deputies to get there to take the report. Maybe she can listen to the owners of the Nike store on Whittier Boulevard hit 4 times with smash and grab robberies. Yeah, I think the Board of Supervisors are the one that should be doing the listening, right? Because apparently the community has heard enough, and the board just is not getting it at all. And these are all the pushers of the defunding of the Sheriff's Department. These are the main architects of Care First, Jail Last, alternatives to incarceration, anything possible that could defund law enforcement and give it to their friends in the nonprofit world and privatize what are government services. And now the next target is public safety. So there you have it, folks. So you can contact them there. Any questions?
Sure. Facebook question from Steve Gregory from KFI News. Sheriff, since this is only a recommended budget, do you anticipate an increase adjustment in the final budget? Follow-up. If the reduction of funding continues, at what point will the Fed step in? Have you discussed your concerns with the state, DOJ, or Feds? Thank you.
We're in the process now of preparing contingency plans because since our staffing we're in a free fall right now, and we're not keeping up with attrition. We're doing projections based on the current academy classes the board is allowing, where that's going to put us. Right now, our patrol stations, we have to lift the overtime cap from 96 hours a month to 120 to accommodate the loss of personnel. but obviously we're starting to get to the point where it's affecting materially public safety. So we will be having these discussions with the Department of Justice for sure. Okay. Ajá. ¿Para español? Ok, vamos a cambiar a español rapidito. Al principio. Todo lo que estamos diciendo, el presidente de los Estados Unidos indicó en su discurso frente a la nación el 20 de enero, y parte de su discurso anual que se llama el Estado de la Unión, dijo que hay que proveer los fondos necesarios para la seguridad pública. No se pueden remover o quitar o disminuir. Y lo repitió 3 veces, dijo eso. Y eso fue el mensaje de él. You can skip the video. Eso fue su mensaje, ¿ves? Fund the police, fund them. No dejó duda, pero estas señoras determinaron que él, pues, no les correspondía a ellos eso. Y su plan de continuar, quitarle fondos al Departamento de Alguacil, está perjudicando el bienestar y la seguridad pública de todos Los Ángeles. Okay, keep going. Keep going. Keep going. I want to show. Keep going. Esto se necesitan 8 academias por año para mantener el nivel de alguaciles necesarios para estar trabajando en las cárceles, en todas las estaciones de alguaciles, la división de detectives, toda la operación se necesitan.
Basically, he's just recapping the stuff that he spoke about in English, and he's just translating.
De posiciones vacantes.
He's summarizing some of the stuff in Spanish.
Sigue. La historial, nosotros del condado sigue aumentando año tras año. Y el porcentaje que nos corresponde a nosotros en la seguridad pública sigue disminuyendo. Y como puede ver aquí, es otro perspectiva del condado. Y los condados alrededor del los últimos en 16% de alguaciles de violar es la falta de alguaciles. Que coge de esos son 100 a pesar de y 1,400 otra. All right. Y la supervisora en la Solís, pero yo digo al público. Y estas son las 3 personas, reducir la cantidad. Estas son las 3 personas de quitarle fondos, darle el dinero a sus amigos y se dice las agencias de servicio social que son privados. Pero mantener esa seguridad pública. ¿Alguna pregunta en español por las redes sociales? We're good? Any other one in English? We're good? All right, thank you.
Okay, so there you have it. This is not just unique to just Los Angeles. Like this defunding shit is occurring in other places in the country, and there's these sometimes overt and covert movements from some elected officials to undermine their police because they don't believe in how the current criminal justice system works, and they want to do this care first, jail last kind of bullshit. I mean, what kind of care are you going to give to someone like Ted Bundy? Like, really? Like, what kind of care are you going to give that person and expect that they're going to change? What kind of care are you going to give to a persistent felony offender gangbanger who wants to go shoot and kill people and take their shit? Like, what kind of care are you going to give to them? You can't. There's no care that you can give to some people and keep them out of jail. Some people, they need to be locked away. They really do. They need to be locked away for a long period of time and never be allowed to walk the streets again because they are a threat to public safety. They are a threat to everyone else. Some people just don't need to be with us. With the way the laws are and everything, all we can do is lock them away. We can't do anything else like euthanize those people. If we if we treated very violent, vicious people like we did animals, then the problem could be more easily solved in a way. If you take a dog that is vicious and attacks people and goes and bites little kids, well, we don't give that dog multiple chances and keep letting it out. We know that that vicious dog is going to continue to be a vicious dog. We put that dog down. That is for public safety. That is for public health. Unfortunately, we don't see things that same way in society regarding certain people. So until some things like that change, and until the people start getting completely tired of this woke liberal bullshit, and they start seeing that things are very, very unsafe because these people who are in la la land and think these great grand ideas and think and make decisions based off of emotions, until people start realizing just how unsafe things are, and put these people in their place and stop putting them in positions of power, and or just flat out telling them to sit down and shut up, then these problems are going to continue to get worse. If you think things are bad right now, things are only going to get worse. They're going to get, I don't know how many times worse than what they are right now, but they are going to get really, really bad. And I hope that when it gets down to a bad enough level, people will start to see the light and be like, hey, these people are stupid. We need to go back to locking people up. We need to go back to imposing a bail on someone. They need to keep their ass in a jail cell instead of continuously stealing shit from people and just being given a slap on the wrist, until people overall start to collectively say they're fed up with it, and it starts affecting so many people. Nothing's really going to change, and we just haven't got to that point yet. So that's why I say things are going to get worse, way, way worse. If you live in some place like this, move. Get the hell out of there. There's no reason for you to stay there. If you got a whole bunch of family, see about trying to get your whole family to move. Things are only going to get worse in those very large metropolitan areas. So, this was kind of a, I don't know what you would call this kind of video. It's not a Monday quarterback video, but it kind of goes in line with some of the stuff I talk about in my Monday quarterback video, so I'll probably end up throwing it under that playlist. If you like what you hear and see, go ahead and give me a like and a share. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more videos. Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense, thank you for watching.